when I got the Divine Matrix, I thought, let me look through this, and I couldn't put it down simply because it is exactly that. Because most of our listeners, Greg, aren't going to be like you. They're not going to travel the world looking for this. They're not going to read every biblical text. They're not going to. They may want to, but chances are they won't. But something like picking up the Divine Matrix, for instance, you don't have to. You actually can benefit from Greg traveling the world, and you see this, and you see how, first of all, how scientifically true this is, and second, how you can apply it to your life immediately. Whether you're sitting at your cubicle, you're sitting in traffic, that you actually do have this power that, Jesus was talking about 2,000 years, and they were talking about thousands of years before him, and this power that you have to create and shape your reality at every given moment.
Well, and the way that is coming about, for a lot of people, they'd like to believe it, they want to believe it, and they say, how can something like the non-physical experience of a belief in our heart affect our physical world? And this is where the new studies are just so fascinating. What we know, Steve, is the world around us is made of energy. Everyone knows that. Primarily electrical and magnetic fields that come from this quantum stuff that holds everything together. So we can think of the world as largely electrical and magnetic fields of information. And this is where it gets really interesting, because in our bodies, the largest generator of electrical and magnetic information in our body is the human heart. It's not the brain. And this surprises a lot of people. The brain creates electrical and magnetic fields, and we all know that, but what people don't often know is that the heart has about 100 times the power of the brain to create electrical fields, and over 5,000 times the power of the brain to create magnetic fields. So our hearts are creating electrical and magnetic fields, and here's where this gets really interesting. Our own physics, you can go to any standard physics text, and the text will tell you if you change the electrical information in the field of our world, or you change the magnetic information, you change the atoms in that field. And what makes it so interesting is that our hearts do both. Our hearts change both the electrical and the magnetic information much more than our brains do. And that's why our hearts, where we have the feelings and the emotions, can be so much more powerful than the brain, where we simply have the thoughts. This is why it's not enough to simply hope for a better world, or hope for, or wish, or say, I want a better life. I want a better relationship. I want to be healed. The language that this field understands doesn't necessarily recognize your brain saying, I want or I hope. What it does recognize is the field of the heart that feels as if these things have already happened, that feels the peace in our families, in our world, that feels the healing and the joy in our bodies. And when our hearts feel those things, we're literally creating the belief waves, the electrical and the magnetic waves that are changing the stuff we're made of, and they're changing the stuff our world is made of. And I think this is the great message of our masters in the past that they tried to convey. And where this is so important now is that the best minds of our time tell us that we're at this pivotal point in human history where we've got to make some choices right now that are either going to affirm or deny our survival as a species on this planet. And it sounds like a daunting task until we understand that we all have a vote. Everybody has input into this field through the language of the heart. The key is we have to understand that language, and we can explore that through the rest of our program today. And
we'll talk about that when we get back. You're listening to Empowered Living, Life, the Truth, and Being Free. We're speaking with Gregg Braden. He's the author of The Divine Matrix. You can check out his website, greggbraden.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Empowered Living, Life, the Truth, and Being Free. I'm your host, Steve Maraboli. For more information about A Better Today, our speeches, programs, and seminars, please visit abettertoday.com or stevemaraboli.com. Please sign up for our newsletter, and also you'll find our live event schedule there. We're all over the country and Europe as well, so feel free to check it out. That's abettertoday.com or stevemaraboli.com. We're speaking with Gregg Braden. He's a New York Times best-selling author of The Divine Matrix, giving us his powerful insights and wisdom from his over 20 years of research. Greg, we were talking about power before we went, and the power of belief, and I pointed out to you during the commercial, when you read the Bible, God continuously says, believe this, believe that, believe this. Mm-hmm. But whenever God's serious about something and really wants you to know, He specifies, says, believe in your heart. And when Jesus is teaching His disciples how to pray, they say, how come it's not working for us? And He says, well, listen, when you pray and ask for something, act as if you've already received it.
Absolutely.
And you'll be given whatever you ask. And this is what I say is there's a difference between believing and knowing. And when you do believe in your heart, that's the knowing. That's the knowing there. And when you're acting as if, that's walking in that confidence. And you've kind of aligned yourself at that point.
Absolutely. And this is, again, this is the power of going back even into the original text. When we go back in to the original Aramaic, which was the language that Jesus' words were recorded in before they were translated. And we do this in our books, a couple of different books. We talk about this. You go back and there were 2 or 3 sentences that were completely left out of the translation, and they just happen to be the sentences where all the juicy stuff is that tells us
right.
that actually tells us how to go about doing these things. And the bottom line to all this, Steve, what we know, what our own scientists are telling us, is the way we feel about ourselves changes the chemistry inside of our bodies, and it can either heal us or it can make us very sick. And in the medical journals, it comes up in discussions of what's called the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. So we know, and that's reasonably well accepted, that the way we feel about our world and our relationship with our world and life, those feelings translate to the chemistry inside of our bodies. Now, and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Bruce Lipton, has done some pioneering work. His book, The Biology of Belief, describes this in very readable terms. He and I tour together all over the world, and our work dovetails very well because it's the same beliefs that change what's happening inside of our bodies. Now our document is changing what happens outside of our bodies, and this is where science and spirituality, where that line gets a little fuzzy, because it says that the world around us, this quantum essence, these fields of energy, can be influenced. They can be changed by changing the way we feel about what's happening in our world. And when we understand that feeling is based in our hearts, this isn't a mental process, and this is a very subtle, that's a very, very powerful distinction. This isn't about positive thoughts only. Thoughts are important.
Right.
It's not just about an affirmation. Affirmations can be important. But what we know is the power of human emotion is the fuel that brings those thoughts and those affirmations to life. It's what imbues them with life and our feelings and beliefs. When we truly believe something to be true, we've got a strong feeling about that belief, and that is based in our hearts, where we create the strongest electrical and magnetic fields in the human body that extend beyond our body into the world around us. And when we really understand that, all of a sudden, this conversation about our relationship to the world and what reality really is, all of a sudden that conversation changes. And to me, that's very exciting because we're at a time, as we mentioned before the break, we're at this time in our world when we're all being told, something has to change, and it's not up to a handful of leaders in a couple of countries to make those changes. If we want peace in our world, we've got to be peace at the family dinner table, because the field is mirroring that back to us in different ways. If we want nurturing relationships, we've got to be that nurturing for other people so the field can mirror that back to us. We've got to feel as if those things are already present, and that's the great secret that we find in those lost biblical texts.